Hey everyone, me Kevin here with your future stimulus check, stimulus package, and money update for June 27th. I'll be talking about the $600 plus up to $1,200 stimulus checks, mortgages, refinancing, suggestions, the market, and of course, work by our leaders. By the way, I started out a video 3 days ago with my email address talking about the coupon and the link down below. So many of you have emailed me and I really appreciate that. I'm working through it, but because I've been inundated and it's just me responding to these emails, I have to extend the coupon code to July 4th. I figured may as well extend it as a holiday code. Anyway, in congressional testimony this week, we finally have an economist going straight up to bat for us in Congress. We already have the Federal Reserve going to bat for us for more stimulus, but listen to what he had to say about the $600 per week boost. Jason Furman, again an economist, in front of Congress, said that the $600 per boost will boost GDP by almost 3%, and support approximately 3 million jobs. He ended up saying, quote, letting the $600 in unemployment insurance benefit expire at the end of July would by itself, his emphasis, cause more job loss than was seen in either of the recessions of the early 90s or early 2000s. So he's literally saying the $600 plus up, just that one part of the stimulus program, would cause more job pain and loss than we saw in the recessions of the early 90s or early 2000s. That's powerful. He also attributed the current stability in our marketplace, even though we might not feel stable, right? Like the marketplace itself, people can still get home loans, right? Banking activity is still happening, although in some cases to somewhat of a limited degree, we're still seeing the economy function, right? It's still lubricated. He says that ending the $600 per week plus up would, quote, be really disastrous. Thank you very much for being somebody who is cheering for the American people. I appreciate you. By the way, this echoes what Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell says when he calls upon Congress to issue more stimulus, continue the $600 per week in unemployment pay, and help the country avoid avoidable bankruptcies. There's a reason, after all, why retail, restaurants, travel, and entertainment companies are continuing to include the verbiage about bankruptcy in their filings more and more every day. I mentioned to you a couple days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, that Dave & Buster's included the word bankruptcy in their filings 0 times at the end of 2019, 3 times in the first 3 months of 2020, the start of the pandemic, and in their last filing, 34 times. And every single day this pandemic continues is a day closer to bankruptcy for all of retail, hospitality, and entertainment. It is scary. Now, those were really good buys, and I certainly felt that way going into the reopening. But now with cases surging, be very, very careful. These are speculative stocks to consider, speculative companies. So Jerome Powell is right. We need more support to prevent bankruptcies here. Now, but keep in mind, there is only so much debt that companies can take on, and that is exactly why renewing the $600 per week boost of unemployment pay to give people the money they need, to give and then support companies as well, is exactly what's going to help us get through this pandemic. Remember, you can still request retroactive unemployment pay if you have not yet. They will pay you for all of the weeks. I think there's a certain date in February that they will pay you back to if you've lost your job. Now, keep in mind that there continues to be reference to the jobs data that's coming out on July 2nd to look at jobs data from June. Keep in mind how these jobs reports are collected. Every single month, and every workday, there are people at the Bureau of Labor Statistics picking up their phone going, hey, you employed or not? Oh, okay, you're unemployed. Oh, you're furloughed. Okay, they do that all day long for the entire month, which means data from June 1st to June 20th is going to look very optimistic because we're all thinking, oh, we're reopening, everything's going great. Yeah, well, we should look for the declining trend of the last part of the month. Hopefully they give us that data, but that's going to be very, very bad. It's not going to look good. Now, the overall headline of the report might look good though, and that part is scary, because a lot of folks are calling on this jobs report to be the next tell as to how big the next rounds of stimulus are going to be, and it's just frustrating. By the way, the Financial Times had an interesting remark in here, and this sort of reiterates what I talked about probably about a month ago. I mentioned about a month ago that I believe we are going to see a decade of frugality coming to our culture and our societies over the next 10 years. Then instead of a roaring 20s, I imagine that we might see a frugal 20s as people continue to restrain their expenses because they're nervous and kind of like we all kind of got spanked up the side of the head here, right? ECB President Christine Lagarde, that's the European Central Bank, has warned that the economic recovery from a hit caused by the coronavirus will be, quote, restrained as households save instead of spend, while some airlines and hotels will suffer irremediable damage. Figures released by the ECB yesterday showed that household savings had soared since the pandemic hit, and the recovery is going to complicate the matter. This kind of reiterates that we might see that decade of frugality. And it certainly doesn't help that companies like, well, the LA Times are running articles like this saying low-wage workers take a hit during the pandemic. And this article here refers to salon workers in Beverly Hills going back to work. Like, the article talks about how she's pulling 30 hours plus a week, but has way fewer customers because wealthier people are spending less money. Here it is. The adverse effects of richer households pulling back on spending are trickling down to low-wage workers. What a mess. The good news, though, if there is any news, the New York Times mentioned in their newspaper this morning that a Deutsche Bank survey found workers in the country hard hit by the coronavirus found on average that those in the United States felt more productive than before the pandemic. So we feel more productive, but we're saving more and staying home more. Now, at least there was a little bit of good news in a sea of bad news, and I have more updates for you. But first, remember to get life insurance. There's an amazing life insurance linked down below. You could sign up in as little as 5 minutes, which realistically means you can get a quote as fast as probably 2 minutes and then sign up within 5 minutes. As little as, they want me to say as little as. And remember, you could get 2 free stocks with Webull when you deposit $100. You get 2 free stocks worth up to $1,400. Now, here's the thing. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of our leaders that are not convinced that this pandemic is a massive issue. Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia was interviewed on Fox this morning, and I watched the interview. And he talked about successfully flattening the curve and millions of people going back to work, but he dodged questions about spiking coronavirus cases. He references, quote, hearing optimism in Texas. But I think the reality is none of us are optimistic about states like Texas and Florida right now. This seems to kind of reiterate the disconnect between what we're seeing with politicians leading our country, especially when we hear the governor of Texas himself discussing regrets that maybe the state opened too quickly. Biden, in the meantime, has jumped on the opportunity to say that he will require masking. Germany fines its citizens €200 to €20,000 for repeated mask violations, and New York City, Jersey, and Connecticut will now fine those who travel from states like Texas and Florida $2,000 to $10,000 if they don't self-quarantine for 14 days upon their arrival. This comes after a student who attended a graduation ceremony after traveling to Florida has now created a cluster of coronavirus cases. Steve Mnuchin, by the way, is looking for more time to issue stimulus checks due to glitches leading to $1.4 billion of stimulus money going to the dead. The Washington Post reported that systems were put in place 7 years ago to prevent this, and obviously those systems have failed. Discussions, by the way, over a payroll tax holiday and travel credit are starting to sound more bleak in the face of rising coronavirus cases, bringing attention back to targeted pay for heroes like essential workers, police, firemen, grocery store workers, and so on, and more stimulus payments. In fact, in a 2-hour Republican luncheon this week, somebody kind of alluded to that happening today on Saturday. It happened this week. It's kind of old. But anyway, Senator Jim Inhofe stated that the next round of stimulus would happen, but stated it's, quote, not going to happen yet. And he added that he does not want to, quote, have a reward given to people who don't want to work. I personally wonder how you're going to tell who wants to work and who doesn't want to work. I personally also believe that most of us want to go back to normal. We're tired of this, and we'd rather go back to work than sit around at home. Anyway, Senator Mitch McConnell states that Congress will pass another stimulus bill if they do, it'll happen in July. Marco Rubio has sponsored a bill allowing American children and spouses of undocumented workers to retroactively receive their stimulus checks. This, by the way, corrects an issue if that proposal or amendment passes that basically if any member of a household was undocumented, no one in the household would receive a stimulus payment, despite ITIN individuals actually paying taxes. That's the purpose of getting an ITIN number. You're undocumented, but you want to pay taxes. You're working on your legalization. You pay taxes, you pay into the system. Well, if you married somebody who was an American citizen, and let's say you had kids who are now American citizens, none of y'all received the stimulus checks. So there's a large swath of people who were cut out due to that, and Marco Rubio seeks to solve that. Well, there you have your update for today. Please consider checking out the links down below. Life insurance, Webull, the courses. I really appreciate your support. Consider sharing this with somebody. Sharing is caring. Consider subscribing, and folks, we will see you soon.